everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our discussion with Stimulus and NowCorp. We'll be exploring their partnership to ensure supplier success. I am your moderator, Raisa Noel, and I can't wait to dive in. Today, we are joined by Tiffanie Stanard, the founder and CEO of Stimulus, and Lara Hodgson, the co-founder, president, and CEO of NowCorp. We'll be discussing today a bit about why they're partnering, the importance of partnerships, the supplier survival strategies, and the future of the supply chain. So first, allow me to introduce our speakers today. So we have Tiffanie Stanard. Welcome. She is, as I said, the founder and CEO of Stimulus, and she's an award-winning entrepreneur, executive, corporate advisor, media personality, and producer with 15 plus years of experience. And Stimulus is a fast-growing venture-backed SaaS company with a nationwide remote team, which I'm proud to be a part of. Stanard is also a recipient of the Business Journal's Rising Star Award, Walker's Legacy's Women in Economic Development Award, and the Tribune's 10 Under 40 Most Influential African Americans Award. Forbes has recently recognized Tiffanie in the Next 1000 Leaders list, and she was named as one of the 10 business leaders transforming supply chain by Business Insider, among many more honors. Hi, Tiffanie. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
We also have Lara Hodgson. As I said, she's the co-founder, president, and CEO of NowCorp. And she serves as an entrepreneur in residence at Harvard Business School and is an internationally recognized speaker leading seminars on creativity, innovation, and access to capital. Prior to now, Lara co-founded Nourish, the manufacturing company, and Insomnia LLC, a firm which specializes in investment, development, and management of complex and innovative world-changing projects. Lara received an MBA from the Harvard Business School and a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering with the highest honors from Georgia Institute of Technology. Today, she serves as a trustee of the Georgia Tech Foundation, in addition to other boards. Ernst & Young recognized Lara as a 2018 finalist for the Southeast Entrepreneur of the Year. Welcome, ladies. So happy to have you today.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. So today, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about the partnership and why Stimulus and NowCorp have partnered to ensure supplier success and how you guys went about that. So first, I want to learn a little bit more about both of you before we go any further. So Lara, we'll start with you. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about NowCorp and how you're aiming to help suppliers succeed specifically.
Yeah, so NowAccount was started at the end of 2010, and it grew out of a problem that my business partner, Stacey Abrams, and I had when we were growing our consumer product company. So, we had a product we had designed and patented. We were initially selling into small retailers and small distributors, and the cadence of the business worked fine because the orders were all the same size, and most of our customers paid us with a P card. But as we got larger and we started selling into national and multinational distributors, they wanted net 30, net 60, net 90, sometimes even net 120 terms. And there was no way that we could deliver, pay our employees and our suppliers, and then wait that long to get paid. So everyone told us we should just go get a line of credit or try factoring. But since Stacey nor I came from the finance world, we just kept thinking to ourselves, why are we borrowing money? We're the free bank here. Why can't we solve this without having to take on debt? And so we really sat down and looked at everything that existed, and we were inspired by the fact that retailers get paid immediately by the credit card. And when they accept a card for payment, they're not borrowing money, they're not factoring. They just pay a flat merchant fee to get paid immediately. So that's what we did with NowAccount. We designed the first ever payment system that allows a small business that's selling a good or service to other businesses or governments. When you deliver your good or service, if your customer will not give you a credit card up front and they want an invoice with terms, you just process it on your NowAccount. You get paid immediately the full amount of the invoice, minus a one-time merchant fee. And so it feels like you took a credit card. You have no liability. You have your own revenue that you can use to grow your business. Because what Stacy and I realized is more businesses grow out of business than go out of business. And if we're going to help small and largely under-resourced businesses scale, we have to solve it not with the old-fashioned finance, lending, et cetera, but we have to just allow people to get paid on time and stop being a free bank to their customers.
I love that. I love what you said about businesses growing out of business instead of going out of business. That's such an interesting take on it. So Tiffanie, let's talk a little bit about Stimulus. So Stimulus combines data insights, relationship building tools, and a proprietary score to help companies make the best purchasing decisions while optimizing and growing their supplier network. So how do you get data and put your data on your platform for suppliers and companies to connect?
Yeah, Laura, thank you so much for that background. Like everything people create is based upon their own kind of crazy experience throughout time or experiences you hear from other people.
Yeah.
So similar, with Stimulus, I've been in vendor management and procurement for over 15 years, started as a corporate employee, then became a consultant in that field, and work with so many different companies throughout the years, helping them understand that your suppliers are your external team, right? Similar to your customers, similar to your internal employees, and how do you use them and work with them as a competitive advantage for your company, but work with them in a better way, right? They're companies like you, so they want good terms, they want a relationship, they want to talk to you, they want to know when an opportunity is coming. So I spent so much of my time gathering data, collecting data on companies, and really matching people manually. Hey, this company is about to buy this, you would fit. Hey, company, find this company, they're creating a product or service that you need. We already talked about this. So I spent so much of my time, and I've been on every platform as a buyer, throughout my years, good or bad. And then when I became a vendor and starting my first company, I've been on so many different platforms that were just never vendor friendly and buyer friendly, right? You kind of get stuck in these portals. They said, sign up for my portal and you would get business. And you don't hear from them for like a year, and then until you meet them at the next event and the next event. And then there's so much data that they were kind of organically gaining on these businesses, whether that company was in your CRM or they attended your marketing event, or 5 or 6 people made an intro to that company over the last year saying you should work with them. So much data was going around, but nothing was centralizing that data. And then to go back into the relationship, people, saying, hey, do you have a relationship with this company? How do I build a relationship with this company? So I kept hearing the word relationship over and over again. And then every platform that was out that's supposed to help with the relationship, supplier relationship management is what they called it. It only managed the transaction, but it never managed, how do I meet them? How do I work with them? How do I grow that relationship over time? So as you said, Stimulus is that relationship intelligence platform that really combines that data, but then relationship building tools, not transactional tools, relationship building tools, so that buyer and vendor can really work together, grow together, understand what relationship they already have and what they can have in the future. And then from there, I'm sourcing, I found you. Now who's buying this or who's planning to buy this? That's not only good for the buyer to say, hey, I'm about to buy this, I'm planning to buy this in the next 12 to 24 months, or this contract is about to be up. But it's also good for the vendors to say, hey, in 6 months, they're buying this. In 12 months, they're buying this. So if I'm meeting you at the time I'm supposed to meet you. So I'm not spending 24 months, 36 months, 3 years, sometimes 5 years trying to discover and work with you. And like you said, growing out of business, because I don't have the time to keep going back and forth with you if you're not about to purchase my product or service. So we gather data from publicly available sources to the integrations that we do to the buyers that are putting suppliers on the platform, and then the suppliers themselves, to make sure everyone has the most accurate, updated information so they can build a better relationship.
Yeah, I was laughing when you were talking because I think of the hours that Stacy and I spent going to supplier diversity portals and putting all the same information in over and over and over, only to never hear anything and to find that we were reaching out at the wrong time, right? And the one thing small business owners lack more than money is time.
Yeah. all the time. Yes.
Absolutely. And you know what? Hearing the word portals, I know suppliers must be sick to death of just portals, portals, portals. So, Tiffanie, I really appreciate how you referenced the unique approach of Stimulus and how it's a different approach than other platforms in the market, and how you took what you saw and transformed it into something really, really useful for suppliers. So, Lara, I want to go back to you. And since we're again talking a bit about supplier success, you recently co-authored a book called Level Up. And that's where you're talking a bit about your startup and its failure, and how it can be a great lesson to small business owners. So from that, what are some key points that you think business owners should understand in order to find success in the supply chain market?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when Stacy and I were approached to write a book this last year, our initial reaction was, we're too busy. Obviously, me with the company, and Stacy at the time was running for governor of Georgia, and we kind of discarded it at first. But then we stopped and we thought there's really two things that drove us to write the book. One is, coming out of the pandemic, more businesses are being started than ever before. And more businesses than ever before are being started by women and minorities. And that's an amazing thing. At the same time, we're in an entrepreneurship crisis in this country. And those two don't seem to go together. But the reason we're in this crisis is that the vast majority of those new companies are not companies yet. They're jobs. People are starting a job either because they were forced to, or they chose to leave their other job. If we don't give these folks the tools, the resources, the knowledge to grow those jobs into true companies, and companies that hire more people, that create generational wealth, that create value for the community, then we've lost this amazing opportunity. So one of the reasons we wanted to write the book was, there's never been a more important time to help these jobs become businesses. One of the things we talk about in the book is our experience when we had started Nourish and we were trying to sell into these large retailers. And everybody said, oh, you should get into Kroger, and you should get into CVS, and you should get in here. And interestingly enough, Stacy and I talked to anybody. We were able to get contacts, right? So we were able to get to the buyer. We were able to get to, the person that can make the purchase. But what we wished we had been told is to have a strategy for the order in which you go to these different customers. Because we all have the dream customer, right? That big dream like logo that you want to say you sell to, but that's not where you want to go first, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to figure things out, and you don't want to do it when you're on the main stage, right? And so pretty quickly out of the gate, we had a big order from one of the largest retailers, and we actually turned it down because we weren't ready. And I think there's this idea of, before you go after, eating the elephant and trying to do it in one bite, making sure that you have your own house in order. And you hear these horror stories all the time of people who go on Shark Tank, and then they get all these orders and they die because they just weren't ready. They didn't have the infrastructure in place. To your point, Tiffanie, it's about a relationship. And I always remind people, your goal is not to get the first order. Your goal is to get the 10th order. And you don't get the 10th one if you don't deliver on 1 through 9 well. So getting the first order when you're not ready can mean you're one and done. And that's not anybody's goal. So, that's why I love what Tiffany's doing, because so many people sort of run out of the gate, and we did, right? We came out, everybody loved our product. There was buzz. Everybody was excited. We were getting all these big orders, and we really honestly weren't ready. And had we known that, there's some things we would have done before we found the audience that we wanted, so that we were ready for prime time.
Makes so much sense. Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. And also just finding the balance between, sometimes companies think they're not ready and they are, right? So finding the middle ground where they
Yep.
don't go after opportunities, big opportunities, because they're scared, they don't know if they can do it, and not leveraging their relationships and leveraging their support to be like, don't tell yourself no before they tell you no, right? So really trying to find
That's
the balance between, yeah.
Well, I always say very often what holds us back is not the glass ceiling, it's a sticky floor, because we're so afraid of the glass ceiling that we never get to touch it. But I think to your point, it's trying to figure out, what does ready mean, right? And so, one of the things Stacy and I talked about is, with one of our companies, we were doing government contracting, and to rush right out of the gate and try to get the prime contract, probably not ready for that. But that doesn't mean you don't put that goal out there and figure out how to work towards it. So, if you want to work with someone like Coca-Cola or the government, you can come in as a sub, right? You can come in as a second tier provider to somebody who's got a big contract and use that as a way to learn, so that you can eventually move into that kind of primary position. So, to your point, don't be afraid to reach for it, but also don't just leap off the cliff and not have your parachute ready.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really great how you guys are talking about the fear, but also the ambition and drive that causes suppliers to just like dash ahead without really being really having that understanding of all of the pieces that are needed. Tiffanie, did you want to expand on that a little bit more?
No, you covered it. It's just making sure you want to go after opportunities, but you want to, like she said, be ready for those opportunities. And it doesn't matter your size. Like if you're just starting, right? It doesn't matter you're a minority, not minority, like you need to be ready for the opportunity, because you can't use, to her point, like you're not ready for the 10, you can't use 1 through 9 as a reference. You're not going to get to the 10, right? You need to have references and case studies and all those things that get you past 10 to 20 to, whatever your goal is.
Well, and the worst feeling in the world is to do all that work. I can remember one time, there was an RFP and we put all this work into making sure that our proposal was amazing, only to find out there were just some prior requirements we didn't quite have. Now, if we'd known that, there's ways to overcome that, right? You can partner with somebody who brings those. But again, it's just sort of knowing where your strengths are and knowing where there might be a requirement that you don't have yet, and just get it in place before, so that you don't do work for something that they can't give you anyway, Yeah,
and RFPs take too long to do all that work. I put it on Twitter. I just did a 20-page proposal that took me like 3 months.
Oh my goodness.
Don't waste the time if you don't have to. Yes.
But I love your idea about like the just-in-time connections, because again, nobody starts a business because they're a cynic, right? Like you start a business because you're an optimist and you see the potential and you want to go after it, and you should go after it aggressively. But you should also just be smart about it, because aggressively going after something when you could have been going after something else has a huge opportunity cost. Like you said, you could spend months on a proposal and there's another proposal you didn't do because of it. And that might have been the right one to go after.
Exactly. So since we're talking about some of the setbacks that suppliers face, Tiffanie, can you expand on what role data plays in supplier success as a whole?
Yeah, data is so important. I always say, if you work with large companies, one thing they ask you for is capability statements. I have a love-hate relationship with capability statements. And it's supposed to be the Cliff Notes version of your business. But as a small business, as a woman-owned business, as a minority business, we know Cliff Notes versions of your business won't get you business, right? It's just too, it's not the information that they really start to look at when they're making a decision. It's giving little highlights here and there. And so when they don't have enough data on your business, they make assumptions. If they can't find you, they can't find your information, they're making an assumption that they may not be big enough for me. They may not have the capacity for me. It's all these things that come into your mind as a buyer. So data is so important that when a company, a buyer first looks you up and first finds you, as much information as you can give them as possible, And that's what we, look to do on the Stimulus platform. Could we collect up to 90 plus data points? But it's not just transactional data, how big they are or their, annual revenue and things of that nature. It's, hey, they have a partnership with this big company. Hey, look at, the background of the CEO that's been doing this for 15 years. She didn't just think of it last week, right? It's looking at the customers, it's looking at the press, it's looking at so many different things that say, hey, oh, and they're also working with a partner that we now have as a partner, right? Because if you're just looking at a big company and a small company, yes, the company's big, they make X amount each year, I'm considering them. But if you're thinking of this small company, they're 1 mile away, so they're helping reduce carbon footprint. They're small and minority, so they can customize my product, and they fit our supply diversity as another data point. So many different things that go into helping a company make a decision. So our goal is to bring all of those things together so you can make more data-driven decisions versus just your own kind of initial assumption that you have when you first look at a company.
Absolutely. So expanding on the concept of the value of data, right? You've given talks before about the importance of data versus habit, and this is one of my favorite things to hear about, because can you explain a bit more about when it comes to how buyers purchase within an organization? How does the data versus habit really come into play there?
Yes, it's my favorite conversation too. Can I talk about, so buyers at the end of the day are people, right? We're humans, we buy whatever. And so you professionally buy the way you personally buy. You personally buy the way you professionally buy, right? So if I'm thinking of coffee, I wake up in the morning, I want coffee. I can either go to the big brand coffee store that's millions of stores everywhere on every corner, not going to say names, and then, or I can go to the smaller coffee shop that's trying to grow. I know the owner, I know the dog that comes in every day, and their business and working with them and me coming in is more meaningful to them than maybe that larger company that won't miss me, right? And that's the same thing when it comes to how you professionally buy. If you're just thinking of the big brands, but you're not thinking of the smaller suppliers and the diverse suppliers, that's how you buy all the time. So we're thinking, or even just adding to that, sometimes people think, oh, there's not women in fintech, right? Or there's not a woman in, supply chain and procurement. And it's kind of habits that you start to form over time, maybe some databases that you went onto, or maybe you searched too long and only one company came up in that search. So you start to kind of build these habits that continue throughout the position that you're in or that you take to other companies, unfortunately. So with us, we're trying to say, hey, here's the data in front of you that says, this is the reason why you should think about, working with this smaller company or working with this minority company, or, hey, here's 20 women-owned fintech companies that you did not know about, and maybe 2 of them are 2 miles away from you within your own city, right? So it's looking at the data and making sure that you're thinking about data before you make a decision, so you can kind of take away some habits that you built over time. And habits could be good or bad depending on what your habits are, right? But making sure that you're looking at data when you're making a decision, because it not only helps you as a company to continue that competitive advantage within your company, but it's helping those businesses be considered more often when you're thinking of making a purchase, whether they're currently in your supply chain or you're looking to add them in your supply chain.
Yeah, I really have to applaud both of you for giving these viral nuggets of wisdom throughout this conversation. I know the folks that are watching are really appreciating it. We're getting some comments that, it's great information and they're really loving the conversation. So thank you for putting this in a very approachable light. So Tiffanie, you mentioned fintech a few times in your example. So I want to jump over to Lara. So you did a recent speech on how fintech is femme, and I just love that. So what role do you think women specifically can play in reshaping the B2B and supply chain industry for the better through technology?
So, it's interesting. I think when people talk about businesses, they always say, businesses need access to capital. But people automatically assume that the word capital and the word loan are synonyms, and they're not. And the fact that you need access to capital does not mean you need to take on debt or that you need to give away your company with equity. So I think one of the things that I've always believed is the minute we start with the word finance, we immediately narrow ourselves to a subset of the population. There are a lot of people on this planet that will go their whole lives without financing anything. So when we immediately jump into finance, we're excluding people. And we all know that a lot of the foundations that underpin financing decisions are biased at their very core. So even if you don't want to be biased, you're using data and decisioning that already is. So you're adopting that. So when Stacy and I sat down, we really thought to ourselves, what is more inclusive than finance? And what's more inclusive than finance is commerce. Because think about it, every person on this planet will engage in commerce. Every person on this planet will engage in some sort of trade, whether it's bartering or using currency. And so commerce at its very core is inclusive because it doesn't exclude parts of the population that aren't set up to engage in that activity. So I always say, if we're going to talk access to capital, what we really should be talking about is access to commerce. Because the most important capital your business will ever have is revenue. Without revenue, you don't need access to capital. Nobody wakes up on a Monday morning and says, I think I'll get a loan for fun, right? So all that other capital is mildly interesting unless you have revenue. That is the most important capital you will have. So if we're talking about commerce and we're talking about being more inclusive, then the innovation has to come in the form of payments, not in the form of finance. And because of the nature of commerce, women are really good at commerce, right? I mean, it's why Stacy and I had our epiphany at lunch, right? We were shopping. So I just think that, to Tiffany's point earlier about habits and data, we've got to break this habit of assuming that the solution for small business is a miniaturized solution for large business. Because small businesses aren't miniature, and small should not be a permanent status, by the way. That's supposed to be temporary on your way to not being small. And so I do think women have an opportunity to play a thought leadership role in the world of payments and commerce that maybe we haven't played traditionally in the world of finance because that was not inclusive. We can make payments inclusive. We have to make payments inclusive. Because it really is the only thing that will change the entire game, right? You can't play by the old rules and expect a different outcome. So you've got to change it. And Tiffanie, when you were talking about, buyers have habits. And one of the things that buyers think about when they're considering a small woman-owned, minority-owned business is, can I take the risk that they can deliver? That's the biggest thing they're thinking about is, man, I want to go with that amazingly innovative small supplier, but I certainly won't get fired if I go with IBM, right? I won't get fired if I go with the big supplier. So one of the things that we are passionate about with NowAccount, and we've worked with big companies like Coca-Cola to say, if your suppliers have a NowAccount and they're getting paid immediately, you have no concern. There is no question they can deliver. Because let's be honest, as you said, Tiffanie, this person has been doing this for 15 years. If they don't deliver, it's not because they woke up and forgot how to do their trade. It's because you're not paying them on time. That's why they can't deliver.
Exactly. And they stressed and they got to pay their fees. Exactly. And I always say that when small businesses are stressed about money and they can't do what they're great at doing,
that's right.
Their brain is like, okay, if I don't make payroll, if I can't bring on new people to succeed, how do I deliver to you? Like, people never talk about how hard it is to get these contracts and the stress of getting in and staying in once you're in there, right?
Well, I love that you used, am I going to make payroll? Because I laugh when small businesses are rarely talked with, we're normally talked at. And we're talked at by bankers, we're talked at by large corporations. And I always find it interesting that the very people that are telling us as small business owners what we should be doing have never gone to sleep wondering if they'll make payroll. they don't understand what it's like to be a small business owner. And if you don't understand that, then you're going to force a solution that doesn't make any sense.
So true. Yes.
This is just like really eye-opening when you put it in this perspective, right? I mean, a lot of people don't think about it this way. From, large organizations, and small businesses are the ones that are really facing these challenges, the suppliers that are really trying to get in the door, right? And I love that both of you really speak to being inclusive, being thoughtful about inclusion, as a company. Right. So Lara, I'd love to hear more about your relationship with Tiffanie and Stimulus, and why you chose to work with her and her vision.
Well, Raisa, I think the point you just made is so right about large companies. They're not aware of the pressures of being a small business owner, and that's not a judgment on them. That's just a fact. I mean, if you're the CFO of a Fortune 50 company, you very likely have never run a small business. That's not the career path to become the CFO of a Fortune 50 company. And I have a very funny story. When Stacy and I had Nourish and we were selling into these large retailers, I had a retailer send us an email. It was a January, and they said, your product is flying off the shelf. We love your product. We're going to put you in 3 more distribution centers. By the way, our net 30 terms are now net 60, period. I thought that was interesting. So I wrote them a letter back and said, well, I'm so excited to hear that our product is flying off the shelves. We would love to be in 3 more distribution centers. By the way, my wholesale price, which was $24.99 a case, is now $28.99 a case, period. And they called me and said, you can't make unilateral price changes. And I said, well, you started it. I felt like my child. He started it, right? And honestly, they didn't realize that. And again, I'm not putting judgment. This person who has never worked in a world where capital was at a minimum, has always had money wherever they want it in any form they want it, honestly had not thought about the fact that net 30 to net 60 costs me money. Had not thought about it. So when I said, you started it, he's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do I mean? Like, if you're going to take 60 days to pay, that's expensive to me. So I used to sit around thinking that big companies must spend time every day thinking how they can stick it to small suppliers just a little bit more, but they really don't. They're trying to manage their cash because Wall Street requires that. And the best way to manage cash is not to give it away very quickly, right? Just hold on to it. So I think what I'm so excited about in working with Tiffanie and Stimulus is we both understand inherently what that supplier is living through, right? We've both been there. We've experienced it from both sides. And I think if you can enable folks coming from a place of I've been there, it's a completely different conversation than somebody who's just sort of theoretically sitting at a bank telling you should do something. And so I love the fact that there's a focus on relationships. And I love the fact that we can combine that focus on relationships with helping these businesses be in a position to get the 10th order.
I love that. So powerful. the combination of these two, Stimulus and NowCorp. Changing the world.
One invoice at a time. Yeah.
I love that. One invoice at a time.
Hey, that. You know what I said the other day? I said, we're going to turn invoices into impact.
Ooh.
I like that.
Yes,
oh my God.
That's what we need to do.
We need to make that a whole campaign. I love it. Yes.
Hashtags, t-shirts, all kinds of stuff.
There you go.
All of it.
So Tiffanie, who initiated the partnership? Can you tell us a bit about the NowCorp and Stimulus relationship?
Yeah, so it was definitely me. I'll be pushing stuff like, hey, like we need to work together. So I was introduced to the NowCorp team, I think about a year ago now.
Yeah.
Am I not mistaken? Right?
I think so. Yeah.
Been about a year, and it was an amazing introduction to your VP of Business Development, Earl Camp, and amazing guy. We've had so many conversations and had a chance to meet him in Atlanta when I visited. And I just kept saying, one, I love what you guys are doing, because the first thing that we hear about when we're working with these buyers and working with these suppliers, to your point, like, should I choose this smaller company and take the risk, right? And then it's that question of, do they have the capacity to, do this contract to grow? And then I try to remind them, like, every company starts small before they grow into something bigger. So you gave someone a chance before they utilized your case study to turn into a larger company, right? To get more customers. And I wanted to make sure that we had that data on the platform. So as soon as you're looking to re-engage with a supplier, looking to work with a supplier that you've never worked with, knowing that they have a Now account, knowing that they have the capacity, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120, does not matter. You know that they're financially sound to work with them. And out of all the data points, you at least know that one, right? And then you're looking at the other data points, the size, the product, the service. Do you like the product? But we knew that was like one of the number one things. Do they have the financial capacity? And I wanted that supplier to not be taken out of the opportunity before they should be taken out of that opportunity. So I started kind of playing around with the idea of the partnership and pitching to Earl throughout months of conversations. And I'm like, I want this data on the platform. And for us, it's looking at non-traditional ways of getting data on suppliers and bringing that information together on the profiles. And, just excited it's based upon money. Like you said, it's not based upon, can I get this loan? It's based upon, you're getting a Now account because you have opportunity in front of you. And that's so important, because that means that company is growing. So,
Tiffanie, you mentioned something about non-traditional ways of getting information, and I think that's that really ties back as well to what Lara mentioned about the old rules, right? The old way of getting in, and there's so much digital transformation happening, and we're all evolving, and companies, large and small businesses alike, all need to understand how to evolve with that. So with that being said, Lara, how would you say your partnership with Stimulus will help the supply chain market positively?
Well, we're going to change the whole world. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that nobody would argue with the statement that small businesses are the engine of the economy. They truly are the engine of the economy. They're the engine for jobs. They're the engine for economic prosperity. And to Tiffany's point, every business starts small. So if we don't build an infrastructure to giving small businesses the chance to grow, then our economy will stagnate, innovation will stagnate, our communities will stagnate, and we will see no growth, right, or prosperity. So I really do think that, when we say we're going to change the world, we are going to change the world. Small businesses have the opportunity to change the world, but we have to challenge some of these urban myths about entrepreneurship and encourage more women, more minorities to be entrepreneurs. It doesn't mean you love risk and you're going to leap off a cliff and you have to give up everything else. It doesn't mean that if you're smart about using the resources that are at your disposal, whether that's, the platform that Stimulus has created, whether it's using tools like Now account, these are all arrows to have in your quiver. And if you have that, then you can change the world. Your immediate world and larger. So, again, I think if we can make suppliers not only aware, but optimistic, then they have the courage to go after those opportunities. I cringe every time I see somebody, say, oh gosh, I'd love to go after that contract, but I can't. Well, why? Why can't you? Well, I don't have this. Okay, well, there's ways to do that, right? Whether it's through partnerships or building capabilities. So I want there to be a world where businesses of all sizes have equal access to customers and capital and commerce. And I think these are the two puzzle pieces that have been missing.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yes, puzzle pieces. Really about being optimistic. I think we need it on both sides, right? The smaller company needs to be excited, and going after business needs to be an exciting time. It can be a very daunting time going after business with these larger companies. And you don't want that. Like, you built this product, created this service for a reason, and little by little, the discouragement just comes down when you're trying to pitch and build these relationships. But then you also want the buyer themselves to be optimistic. Like, I built this from my experience to hopefully help your job run a lot smoother and help you serve your customers and your partners and all of that. It's supposed to be that.
Yeah.
It hasn't been that in a really long time, though.
Well, and it's interesting. One of the folks that we've worked with for years, Therese Thompson, she retired a few years ago as the head of supplier diversity at Coca-Cola. She used to say something that really resonated with me. She would say that we, meaning her world of large corporate procurement and buying, needed to move beyond supplier diversity to supplier development. And what I loved about that is that's a dynamic word. Supplier diversity just means that you've purchased something from a diverse supplier, but supplier development means you've gone an extra step to help that supplier grow with you so that they can sustainably continue to serve you. And that always intrigued me that she said it that way, because I think if we all focused on developing our suppliers and suppliers focused on developing their relationships with buyers, then that goal is easily attainable, right? Yeah. And I think that's the key is thinking more dynamically about what am I doing? At the end of the day, the buyer wants to be able to identify the best, most innovative supplier that can deliver, but they need to find that supplier at a fairly low cost, right? Like, they don't have time to go out and vet and do all this stuff. And the supplier's resource constrained. They're trying to find that ideal customer with the lowest cost of customer acquisition. So if that can be facilitated, both end up getting what they want.
Yeah, even beyond that, the conversation that's been happening over the last couple of years, supply development, yes, so important. But even changing the title from supply diversity to business diversity has been a part of the conversation for the last few years, and probably even longer than that, but it hasn't taken flight yet because supply diversity titles still everywhere.
Yeah.
But it goes back into supply diversity has been around for so long, right? Since 1970s, probably longer than that. And it's always focused on kind of mom and pop shops and smaller businesses, and business diversity is supposed to expand and really focus across the board on innovative technology, fintech companies, things outside of kind of just the smaller companies you're thinking of, but companies that can grow. Like, the goal is not to stay small, right? Like you said earlier, the goal is to start small because you can't start big, right? So you start up small business, whatever you want to call it, and then grow from there, right? So a lot of titles and kind of descriptions, even the descriptions you see now, right? Titles, Chief Diversity Officer and Belonging, and all these different things that are changing across the board that we're hoping that sticks beyond just these last couple of years. Development, business diversity, for it actually to help us and not you think you're helping us.
Well, I also think, to your point about business diversity, there are so many axes on which you can think about diversity, right? There's gender and race, but there's also the type of business. And, one of the things Stacy and I found when we started our first business is people would look at us and say, well, you're not a high-tech startup. We're like, and they're like, well, you can't really build wealth that way. And I thought, are you kidding me? I'm standing in the shadows of the Coca-Cola Tower. I think you can create wealth with a beverage company. Mrs. Fields makes cookies. But there's this mindset that if you're not a certain type of company, then you're sort of a second-class entrepreneur. And that's just wrong. So I think whether you're a buyer expanding beyond, like, where are all the different places that I can engage with diverse businesses? And it may not be what you think, right? It might not be the category you thought, because there are diverse businesses everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ladies, this has been a great conversation. And as we head to the close, I'd like to get a sense of kind of your key wisdom, your key takeaway you want to leave folks with. I know there's been a lot of insights and big pieces of information shared here. And like I said, very, very, accessible, right? And easy to understand for people. So if you had to sum up what your key piece of wisdom would be for the day in one sentence that you want to leave people with.
Okay.
Okay.
One sentence.
Mm-hmm. In one sentence.
Okay. I think that
leave people with.
My sentence would be, I think if your goal in life is success, you're not thinking big enough, that your goal in life should be significance, because that's infinite.
Oh, that was nice.
Wow. Tiffany, she's put you on the spot.
No.
Nobody's ever asked me to do it in one sentence. Like, that's impossible for an Italian girl. I got to talk.
Oh, I know. Oh my goodness, you should ask me before, and I gotta think. Okay,
it's a challenge. You can do it.
The spot. Okay, and this is across what? This is across.
Across. What would be your piece of wisdom for suppliers?
I think elaborating on what I said earlier of don't tell yourself no before the organization tells you no. And that's all opportunities as a supplier, whether you're going after an investor or a loan, whether you're going after that contract opportunity, whether you're deciding to go into a new industry. It's like sometimes we start telling ourselves, no, I'm not ready. I can't do this. Am I big enough? Do I have the capacity? And I've gotten opportunities so many times where I'm not going to get this. And then I got it, right? So don't tell yourself no before that opportunity or that business or that organization tells you no, because you don't know what is written in stone for you yet.
Very powerful. Love that. So we'll wrap today with another piece of wisdom that Lara shared and Tiffanie agreed on, that the road ahead is looking like changing from invoices to impact. And again, we want to thank everybody for watching today and joining. To learn more about NowCorp, you can visit nowcorp.com. And then to learn more about Stimulus, you can visit getstimulus.io. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.